Hello, everyone. Today we have the pleasure of being joined by Ugo Arinzeh, the managing director of Onyx property team. Ugo, how are you doing today?
I'm really well, thank you. And yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast.
The problem is an absolute pleasure to have you on. So, if we start off by discussing a little bit about your background, your journey, right, getting to the position you're in, and what does your day-to-day role at the business look like at the moment?
Okay. Well, I grew up in the States. I'm Nigerian by birth and background, but grew up in America. I have an MBA in finance, so I started my career as an investment banker in the real estate division. So I structured large loans for corporate owners of real estate, REITs, opportunity funds, developers. And yeah, I loved the work. I was at Bank of America for many years and got to travel around the country, America, and structure real estate deals. So I absolutely loved it. But after about 10 years, I was ready to do something perhaps a little bit different. Along the way, I had bought and sold property. And quite like that, I started doing some refurb projects, taking some interior design classes. I loved the, tactileness of individual real estate deals and
Okay.
residential. And then I got the opportunity to join an architectural firm that was based in London in a CFO finance role.
Yep.
And that's what got me to London. So I moved over with that firm and worked for them for a couple of years. And then I literally hit the ground loving London, really loved its energy, its culture, its history, and just, yeah, so much to offer. And one of the things I noticed having bought and sold property in America and working with some good agents and some great agents was that, in this country, in the UK, it's not the norm. We don't typically have buying agents. And so if you are a buyer trying to buy a property, you're kind of left on your own to navigate and figure out the buying process. And ultimately, you are having to negotiate with an agent, the sales agent that works for the seller. So that is full of conflict of interest. You are completely mismatched. And having experienced great agents in America, it kind of blew my mind that people were not representing buyers more. So I saw a gap in the market and an opportunity to set myself up as a buying agent. And that's what I did. So I set up Onyx property team back in 2012, and we specialize as buying agents, but we are actually now have expanded to be a full service property agency. So we help clients buy, sell, rent, and manage property here in London.
Amazing. Amazing. That's great to hear. Now, what does your role look like at the company? Are you focused on, growing the business and development? Are you still focused on within the business and the team? What does your primary role and day-to-day look like at the company?
Well, we're a small team, so I've got support staff, primarily admin. So a lot does sit with me as far as the actual execution. So when we take on our clients, I'm typically the one taking them around, showing them. When we have sales listings, I will work on the viewings and what have you. But with my team, I manage them in terms of helping set up the schedule for photo shoots. We manage about 25 properties, so they look after the properties in terms of property management. But yeah, I do a lot of the actual delivery service. But also, when you're an entrepreneur or business owner, you then have to do all the other things, such as strategically thinking about things. Marketing is obviously something we're always thinking about on the face of the business. So that involves, social media, working with my social media partner, but also strategically thinking about the business and where you want to take it, how you want to grow it, what's working, what's not working. And then the mundane things like administration and taxes and paying bills and what have you. So we wear several hats, obviously.
Absolutely. And is there a particular area that you really enjoy running as part of the business, or perhaps that's your strong suit? And if so, what kind of areas do you actually naturally feel that you're the best suited to?
Well, I love being a buying agent. I love working with buyers, especially London is very international buyers and lots of foreign buyers. So I love working with clients, helping them on that journey, helping them solve the problem of finding the right property for them, whether it's a place to live or a second home or an investment property. So I love solving that problem for clients. London, we have some incredible homes. So That's really fun to go see properties and view them and things like that. But also, it's really about working with people, understanding them, what they're looking for, and helping solve that problem or solve that puzzle. And that's always fun. And that's very gratifying. Literally, I've had people tell me that they could have never done it without me. They didn't know where to start. They're very grateful for the support and the service we offer. And that is very fulfilling.
Amazing. And I guess that leads me on to the next question. What do you think has contributed the most to your success? And what area do you pinpoint as something that you deliver and you emphasize that this is what your business is proud of?
Well, I've heard it said that, your best position to solve a problem that perhaps you once had. And I think as an American living here, I have experienced what it's like to relocate and find housing and all the components of settling into a new country. So I think that makes me uniquely qualified, uniquely positioned. I like to say I speak Americanese, so I help my clients understand this is how it works in America, this is how it works in England. And while there's some similarities, there are going to be places where things are vastly different. And so we help people navigate that and understand that. And ultimately, I like to say, even if my clients don't buy a property, if at the end of, say, we've gone out several times and they decide it's not the right time, or, maybe the budget is not where they thought it's supposed to be, I still feel like I've done my job, because ultimately, I think my number one job is to help educate my clients and to make sure they feel good about purchasing a property in London. And that's not a small thing. And you can imagine if you're buying for the first time or not, we are helping people with often the most expensive investment of their life. So I take it as an honor. I take it as truly somebody trusting me with that. But I also take it as my number one job is to be a fiduciary, to look after my clients. And so I think having my banking background, that analytical background, a friend teases me, I never met a spreadsheet I didn't like. So we help lay it out in a way so that people feel very comfortable that they can understand things. And then ultimately, it's also being empathetic to what the situation is. And buying overseas, if I use the buying side as an example, is a very stressful property and process. And somebody's really putting a lot of trust in you. And so I want to make sure that I'm sensitive to that. That's not something you're going to push anybody on. They need to feel good about the process. But also when we talk about selling for somebody, I really like to understand what's behind selling. Why are you selling? What does selling mean to you? Because that's where I think we're truly able to offer personal service. And that's what a personal service feels like. It's not just a cookie cutter. I work, with 50 people and push 50 people out the door. It's like, no, we work with a handful of clients at any one time. But that's to make sure that how we work with them is bespoke to them. And I think, again, having, working for yourself it is really demanding, really tough. But one of the blessings is that you can hopefully work the way you want to work and work with the people you want to work with. And that should, for me, it gives me, I have great energy. I show up every day excited to do the work that I get to do. I feel blessed to do it. And again, that's energy you bring to your clients, and people can feel energy. They can sense it, when you go into a restaurant and somebody, acts like, they're doing you a favor versus somebody who goes the extra mile and is, conversant and able to answer your questions and really brings a
Proactive approach.
pleasantness in working with them. And so that's something I think, again, is really important, that you do work you enjoy, and then you're bringing great energy in. And that's part of what you can bring to your clients or your customers.
Absolutely. And being in the market and within the industry, it is very high pressure, right? Different people have different demands, different timelines, and people want things done quick. Now, how have you positioned yourself to be able to deal with that pressure and the demand within the industry? And what are some ways you think you do that better than everyone else?
Well, one of the things I think we would do a really good job is creating the process for people. And so I've talked a bit about being bespoke, but
Yeah.
we have a foundation of a process. And once I've heard it said, and this is what I try to live is, anything you have to do more than twice, you should create a process for it, right? You shouldn't have to, if you know after every consultation, you're going to send a follow up email, well, create the template of that email, right? And then you adapt it to that client. And so I think that's when one of the things our clients really get is somebody who knows what they're doing, but it's because we've done this for years. I've done this for years, but along the way, I've created the processes. And so people, I think, oftentimes you go in to be an entrepreneur is because you don't want any rules. You want to work for yourself. You want to do things your way. And that's great. But what you don't want is to drop the ball, miss critical steps, especially in my world. And so we want to make sure we've got a very diligent checklist process and we use a platform called Asana to journey our clients through and to check off who's doing what, what's the next step, how do you, and you're not reinventing things every time, but obviously you can take that template and adapt it, but the process is there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I guess now that takes us nicely onto the next topic that we want to dive into, and that's industry trends. So, what are some major trends or shifts in the industry you're seeing at the minute, and how do you think you're gearing yourself up to be able to adapt to that?
Well, the London property market is very challenging. We've had years of various tax changes that have definitely softened the market. We're impacted by interest rates. We're impacted by, for my clients, currency exchange rates. We're impacted by property prices. And so it's been hard to find a trend line because unfortunately we've just had a lot of constant changes to whether it's compliance or cost. So stamp duty is a cost, a tax we charge or the government charges on the purchase price. So that has changed significantly over years. We've had some non-dom changes in terms of the tax regime. So that's going to have a trickle-on effect that clients will see where the demand is. Obviously, globally, everybody's experienced, inflation and the war in Ukraine. Those multiple things have created a lot of uncertainty in the London property market. And the London property market is heavily reliant on international buyers. So about 40% of London properties are sold to international clients. And so for them, they are much more unsettled because the landscape continues to change. So it's really hard it's hard to make an investment if you don't know how it's going to change. We've got a recent renters reform bill coming through Parliament that's going to impact landlords. And so I think for me, it is trying to stay abreast of things and to be transparent and honest with clients and make sure that, again, they have the information that they need to make the right decision. But it's staying abreast of what's happening and then ultimately trying to communicate that to your clients, advise them, try to get ahead of things, and make sure that we can, I'm working with an American client right now looking to buy several properties and making sure when we crunch the numbers, we're conservative. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I want to be conservative and show where we've made assumptions and, give ourselves room so that in the worst case scenario, the deal still makes sense.
Absolutely. And I guess a big trend at the minute is obviously you talked about processes and systems and using software, Asana and things like that, using, I guess, technology. So how important is the evolution and the advancements of technology within your business and the industry? And how do you think that's benefiting the business as a whole?
Yeah, look, technology is impacting. There are platforms where people can sell for almost no fee. And, it's a race to the bottom sometimes in terms of fees. Whereas we've positioned ourselves as a personal service. And so I think, again, there's room for everybody in terms of, clients. Some people want the cheapest option and want to do it themselves. Some people want a professional who's educated and knowledgeable and are willing to pay for the service and see the value in that service. And I can, in our consultations, in our education process, in our service delivery, that is what we are offering our clients. Technology can be utilized it's utilized in our world to try to get data, which is tough in this country because we don't have an MLS system, whereas in America, lots of states have, the multiple listing service. So in terms of access to information. So again, one of the opportunities is to use the tools that I have in my disposal to give clients information, but also in a way that is helpful to them and is salient and really relevant. So that's important. But these tools like Asana or the Google Drive or Google Spreadsheet are very important to me, how we organize our clients and their information and sort things. That's very important, but also AI now. So that's something that I was very nervous about or stayed away from for a while, but really embraced it going into last year. And I was at a real estate conference and they said in the next 10 years, there's going to be two types of agents, one that uses AI and the other one doesn't exist. And so that was really like, oh, wow, like I got to get on board with that. And that's been super helpful. And I put out weekly videos on YouTube. And so, for example, AI can help me some of the topics that are relevant that I should be talking about. And even just giving the framework of the script. They don't write my scripts, but they'll give the framework, the key points,
Yeah.
and I can fill that in. I can color that in. Whereas to start from scratch sometimes is very challenging. I have a team member who does that. But again, that's helping us enhance what we're doing. Again, technology is everything from using the best iPhone in terms of recording my videos and social media. So those are tools that we can be using in terms of technology. But ultimately, it's personal service enhanced by technology. And that's the space we sit in. But others might be, you know, looking to be the cheapest option and therefore got to use technology to automate everything. And that's not where I've positioned the team.
And if I may ask, what made you kind of on the fence and on the edge, when AI was coming out and, how comes you were a bit on the fence? Was it the unknown and not really knowing? Was it the capability and the possibilities? What kept you perhaps on the fence and perhaps sitting back instead of perhaps jumping on the board?
Because I think it was the thought the robots are coming to take all of our jobs. And so I think it was kind of nervousness about that. But again, as I said, what I've gotten comfortable with is for some people, that's going to be appealing to them, right? They think they can do it themselves, and some people can. But what I can definitely say is we earn our fee and more. Okay. And so what I've gotten comfortable with, I'll use it in those places. And I've given you a couple examples where it can help me and help the business. But ultimately, my clients are looking for a personal service. But I think my initial hesitation was, my goodness, everybody's going to just want the automated version and go on the internet and find the properties for themselves and organize the viewings and blah, blah, blah. But again, some people can do that and some people do that, but that's not the reality for everybody and certainly not for the clients that I work with. But that was my initial hesitation.
And what are your thoughts on finding that balance? Because it's all well and good AI is coming in and it can do a lot and it can make businesses more efficient. But people still want that human touch. People don't want to be dealing with robots all the time because when you call a dentist, it's a robot. When you want to book an appointment, it's a robot. So what is that balance of having that human touch, which customers want and makes your brand stand out, versus having AI working within the business to actually make it more efficient and streamlined? What is your take on that?
Well, I think it's always evolving, and I think you have to see where it can add value while retaining the level of service that is important to your clients. So I think for my clients is, for example, we set up a WhatsApp group, and then when we go out to viewings, I'm taking pictures and putting it out there and recording in a very systematic way. And then we'll, put it in WhatsApp and also the follow up in the Google Drive. But I think with everybody's business, it's going to be different. Again, another adage that I live by is, your business will only grow to the extent that you do. So you constantly have to be in a space and a mindset of growth. And so I don't think it's something to fear. I think you have to see where you can apply it in your business to make it more efficient. But ultimately, as you said, people do want that personal service, right? And you know that we all know the frustration of having an automated or somebody's, a chat robot on the side of that website and they're not understanding what you're saying and they're not interpreting it, you want to be able to still offer a personal touch. So I think the balance is something we all have to continue to calibrate and figure out where it makes sense and where it doesn't. I know one of my colleagues, that the way he runs his business in terms of viewings, he fully automates the process until he shows up at the viewing. I have thought about that and I was like, okay, that could be really interesting. But I know for me, when I call and speak to somebody in booking the viewing, I get information that's helpful when they're at the viewing, right? And I don't want to lose that touch. I don't want to make it such that I'm showing up and I don't remember what your situation is. And I've gotten, new opportunities from that because again, people experience you in multiple touch points. And so then it's like, well, that house wasn't right for me, but actually I need to sell my other house. So I love the way you work. And could you come around? So I think it's just finding the balance that works for you.
Absolutely. I think the key driving force is emotion. When speaking human to human, you're able to understand that emotion. And some people use the emotion in a positive way, where they're able to understand what people really want, and some people perhaps use it in a negative way. So I think that's one thing AI and robots can't really pick up. Not sure about the future, but I guess we'll see, isn't it?
Yeah.
So a big thing, a trend I wanted to get your thoughts on is social media. Social media has been around for the past 10, 15, 20 years, and it's only getting bigger. And I know you're really into social media. It's something you find valuable. But what is your take on social media? How important is it to the success of the business? And how do you see the trend of social media adapting for the industry?
Well, I think number one, look, I'm in real estate and it's a space where agents, are very much like, put their face out there. And so, perhaps 20, 30 years ago, it would be you take out a billboard or take out your faces on a park bench or whatever. Social media, I think, it is part of your marketing. It is something now that people will Google and look up your profile. So I think it's a validation point, and it's an opportunity for you to establish credibility, right? So I've put out this weekly video for over 5 years, and I think people can go in and see, wow, she's serious, but she's, personable and what have you. And she's been putting this out on a consistent basis because that's what I want people to come across, that I'm knowledgeable, trustworthy. And I just didn't wake up yesterday to just try to sell pretty houses. No. So I think social media, there's a space for it as part of your marketing and your profile. If you are an entrepreneur, you get to be, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. So
Really?
use social media in creating that trust, that likability. And also, but there might be people that don't, suit you. And I think it's truly about trusting to be authentic. I think showing up consistently is also demonstrating credibility, right? So people can, I like to say to my family and friends, if I say I'm going to do something and I don't do it, check the hospitals because literally something must have happened such that I wasn't able to do that. And that's just been who I am. But I also think I work on habits that create that. And so social media, you can be talking about things, whether you are a real estate agent like myself, or say you could be in something that can be quite dry, but you can make it interesting because you're about informing people, right? You're sharing little nuggets. You don't have to talk to them for 20 minutes at a time, but if you, give 1 or 2 minute nuggets, people are looking for information, but they're also looking for people who they identify with. And that also means that someone else can be doing the same exact thing, but doesn't mean that client's not going to identify with you. So that's why being authentic makes sense, because I know somebody might feel more comfortable working with me because as I said, I'm an American living here versus somebody who's perhaps doing the same thing as a Brit living here. But if I'm not putting that out there and speaking like that and keeping my American accent 14 years in, then maybe I'm going to lose that authenticity or that identification factor. So I think trust that, you know, it's a platform that you can use to put your personality out there. But I also think there's a danger to, I think I do a really good job of, I couldn't really care less about social media. I don't really spend a lot of time on there unless it's, you know, putting out that content. Yes, we want to like other people's posts and follow them. And my admin, she helps me with that. But I also think it's really important you don't get caught up and sucked into comparing yourself. Use others, you know, find people you like what they're doing and try to model some of those best practices. But don't, you know, use, if you're getting negative feelings and anxiety from it, then perhaps you know you need to delegate it out and find different ways so that it's an asset, not a liability for you.
Absolutely. And a big shift at the minute, I guess we're seeing is the transition from long form to short form content, right? Across TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, even. Is that something you've looked into and something you already implement within the business? Or is that something you're perhaps looking to implement down the line with short form, snappy, content that actually hits that viral aspect and even the educational aspect? Is that something you've perhaps looked into?
Yeah, again, we're evolving on that. And I am working now with a social media partner and spending, you know, some money on that. And that is to adapt into that world. And when we take, say, a YouTube video, we're also then creating the content for short form as well, right?
Yeah.
So you can use the same topic, the same conversation, and cut it up. And that's what his job is. But recognizing that is where things are evolving and that's kind of where things sit. I will tell you from my world though, it's still my leads and we've, you know, can get a lead a week or something like that. Somebody saying, I saw your videos on YouTube and really appreciated the content you were putting out there. So recognize that there will be different platforms to do different things. So now, if you Google American buying property in London under the video tab, we show up. And that's from putting out that YouTube. And that's the thing, YouTube is the #2 search engine owned by Google, which is the #1 search engine. So that will continue to have value. But as you said, the short form content is definitely the trend forward. But we want to layer it and have multiple showing up in multiple places. Obviously, I don't have the time to do all that. So that is something that I have felt for me and where we are in the business was a good use of our budget to pay a professional who can really lean into that.
Amazing. Now, I guess to come on to the last part is, future goals and, what does the next 6 to 12 months look like for yourself and the company? Is there a specific goal you're looking to achieve? Is there a certain outcome you're really driving the business towards? What does the next 6 to 12 months look like for yourself and the business?
Well, we do have specific goals in terms of the number of clients we want to serve in a given year. And so that is key. One of the things I am working on trying to convert to is the 12-week year, which is a book where we're going to, you know, really, I am shifting from having an annual goals or one big annual goal, but breaking down to 4 quarterly goals and
Okay.
trying to be more successful in a shorter period of time. And that is a shift that creates a bit of an urgency and what have you. But that is something that I think I can see the value of that. And that is something I'm adapting into. I'm in the process of reading that book and trying to put the strategies in there. But in terms of the year 2025, I am ambitious in the year. I've got lofty goals for it. But also, we're navigating a market that has been, you know, as I said, unsettled for several years, and just recognizing that there are things coming down the pike that will impact perhaps demand. But ultimately, the thing I can control is to continue to try to market the business and expose ourselves in ways that if something's not working, we have to shift, but also give things enough time and consistency to see if they can work.
Very well said. And I guess lastly, what is the biggest piece of advice you've learned the hard way, or the biggest piece of advice you wish you knew when you started your journey?
Yeah, I think it's ultimately to trust your value, and not everybody's your client. And I think if you the things you can say no to. So, for example, now I'm very comfortable saying no in terms of when we, for example, work with buyers, we ask them to sign a retainer agreement. They acknowledge our fees and we take a retainer, non-refundable retainer. And some people will balk at that and say, oh, they don't want to pay the retainer, they'll pay at the end. But I am so clear now and have been burned, right, from doing searches and get paid absolutely nothing. And the retainer is minuscule for the fee we would earn at the end. But it's from having experienced that. And if somebody's not willing to put, a token amount of money down to work with me, that is not my client. And it is not, and I'm not going to divert time from the clients who are willing to make that very small step to someone else who's not. And so I think that is the thing, to really get clear on your value proposition, the value you bring. And they're going to, in the beginning, you might want to chase everything, but it's the things we can say no to that I think ultimately, and stay in your lane, and maybe not chase the shiny objects, and not, just trust that if you play the long game. And I think resilience is really one of the attributes. I think it's probably the most important attribute of anybody, really, is just stay in the game. If you trust what you're doing, stay in the game, find the people who are doing it well. Success leaves clues, get support, whether it's coaching or what have you, accountability. Because until you've really exhausted everything, you're still winning, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you very, very much, Ugo, for the valuable insights. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure everyone watching has really found a lot of value. So much detail, so much, information to digest, but it's amazing to see. So thank you very much for your time. I'm sure everyone has really enjoyed it. And I guess thanks for everyone who has tuned in. Any final closing points?
Thank you again for having me, and I wish you all well. Thanks for the opportunity.
No problem.